Welcome to this week's episode of PreZence. We are joined today by Holley Willis. Holley has a B.S. in International Relations. She has an M.B.A. in Business Administration. She's an intercultural, global, bilingual educator. She does workforce development, amongst many other things. I could keep on going on, but instead, I'll let Holley fill us in a bit. Holley, can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, first of all, that was a wonderful introduction. So thank you very much, Cindy. I'm going to say at this point in my life, I don't really like to rely on my degrees or on my job titles. I will just say that the things that I'm probably most passionate about in general are helping people become their best selves, helping them progress in their careers, whether those are, kind of more traditional careers in corporations or businesses, or if they're entrepreneurs. That's what I love the most. For over 20 years now, I have been teaching abroad in Mexico, Dominican Republic, a little bit in Haiti, and taking young people, high school students, college students, adults, retirees for immersion programs in these countries. And it has shown me that people learn the most and they have their biggest ahas when they are learning in context, when they're doing what is called academically experiential. That's what they do.
Most recently, you'd founded a company, ILABI Global, which is basically a culmination and fusion of all the very things that you were sharing with us. Can you tell us a little bit about ILABI?
Absolutely. Actually began with my immersion programs. That was the first iteration of ILABI well over 20 years ago. That iteration has developed into what we're doing now, which again is global workforce development training. We realize that people not only need to learn new skills, but even if you learn something new, if you don't apply it, it doesn't matter. So in order to help people figure out how to do more positive daily habits that are going to really assist them in their professional lives and in their personal lives, they have to reflect, think about what they've done in the past, understand it within the context of their life and their work experiences. And then they have to make the leap to say, okay, now that I've learned a new strategy about how to do it differently and how to do it better, how will I actually apply it? And do I choose to apply it? Because even if you learn a new skill, if you don't choose to do it, nothing's going to change in your life.
One of the things that I think is quite fascinating about ILABI is this idea of taking not only traditional leadership and management skills, but also taking essential skills, those human skills, and developing a workforce that is quite comfortable with essential skills, which is at the core of a lot of what ILABI does. Can you share with the audience what these essential skills are?
Definitely. Another way to say essential skills, there's two ways: life skills, and I think what people know more, soft skills. So soft skills have to do with all the things you need to do well in your workplace, no matter what your position, no matter where you are in the hierarchy, especially if you are perceived to be as some type of leader, not just a leader in title, but a leader that's actually influencing and impacting the bottom line and the motivation levels of those around you. So soft skills have to do with things like communication skills, also emotional intelligence, how to respond if people are in various states of crisis. So I don't want to say it's really crisis management, but just if you see somebody that's on, I'll just say 10, meaning that they're really acting out, or they're really upset, or they're really angry, it's helping people think through those feelings. We're not trying to stop those feelings or negate those feelings. We're just trying to help them get a handle on what they're thinking so that their reactions in the workplace won't be so magnified and upsetting to others, as well as even to themselves. We're trying to help people learn how to better regulate their own emotions and influence the emotions of people around them. Because no matter how amazingly skilled you are technically, if you don't get the human element, you've completely missed out.
And this helps you build and empower teams, which is also something that ILABI teaches its clients' workforce to do.
Absolutely. A lot of people, I think, historically have felt stuck, like maybe in what they're doing. They feel like I'm not having an alignment between what are my core values, as well as what are the organization's values, as well as what are maybe the department that they're in values. And so once they realize that, hey, no matter again where I am in the organization, I have power. I have influence those around me. I can influence not only people that maybe report to me, but I can actually influence my colleagues, my peers, and I can influence the people that I report up to. And once you recognize that you have that capability, as well as just understanding of how to do it, not just well, but I think more importantly, intentionally.
Right.
Intentionally, like intentionally doing things that are going to positively impact the workplace, then you have more innovation, then you have more job satisfaction, then you have more engagement, you just have more fun.
And that's the key, having fun. So for those of us that are joining us live today, you'll notice that the Poodles decided to join us. They decided, we did not put them on our lap, and we said, you know what, let them be here with us and we will have fun doing this interview and podcast with the Poodles. So there's 3 of them, and that's part of us having fun. So what you're doing, whether it's in the workplace or in your personal life, it's always wonderful to find ways to make it fun, even when there's work involved. I want to piggyback off of this concept of fun, because although you are someone that's very serious, you are a leader, you do workforce development, you are an educator and more, there's this element of joy and fun that you bring not just to your friends in your personal life, but also in the workplace. Can you talk to us a little bit about how it is that you enjoy?
Absolutely. Fun is for me as high a motivator as freedom. And when I'm saying freedom, I'm talking the freedom to be creative, to be innovative. There is joy in creating. And a lot of folks think that they just have to do what's always been done. No, every single day you can think of one way to do whatever it is that you do in your life a little bit better and a lot more fun. So I'm just going to give a couple examples of things that I do to bring fun into not only the trainings, but suggestions of bringing fun into the workplace. One of the things that I think is important is just to share stories. Like right now, we're sharing stories, we're sharing information about each other so that hopefully people through this medium of communication get to know us better, as well as start thinking about, okay, how could I apply anything that I'm hearing right now in my own life? And the fun part is just sharing really human, honest stories. If we share stories, a lot of times we find that we have a lot more in common with someone than we maybe initially thought. We also just get to be creative. A story doesn't just have to be telling something that, just happened in the past. It could also be a story of learning. Like, how did you learn to do XYZ skill better? I'm thinking back to a time when I was actually a manager in a health system. I was working at a particular hospital, and my departments that I was responsible for were all in operations. In order to make the monthly department meeting more fun, I asked everybody to come in and to basically do skits of what were some of their daily encounters in the workplace, what was going on. So when I did that with my departments, it was multiple departments, we laughed and enjoyed ourselves because we could all see the truth of what was happening in a lot of experiences, whether that they were just happening among ourselves within the department or working with patients and their families. And so it gave all of us a sense of joy, a sense of fun, a sense of laughter. When people laugh, when you can find humor in situations, they're relaxed. And thus their motivation and energy levels are higher and they're more creative.
I like to add that when you are able to share those experiences through the bonding of sharing a skit, and I notice I use the word bonding, you create bonds, you create a team spirit.
Yes.
And people do feel like they matter and they belong. We are in it together. Yes, I had something similar happen to me with ex-client. It could be anything, but this idea of coming in with the shared experience of a situation gives you, I understand. I felt that. I get it. Yes, we are in there together. And that's part of how you empower teams, right? Through the bonding that comes from that laughter. And that's a really important element of leadership. So oftentimes we think about leadership as the person in charge, right? Up in the hierarchy, or the person that's inspiring you. But leadership is so much more. Leadership is creating bonds. Can you speak to about how you have brought in your leadership, not just through joy, but through other non-traditional definitions of leadership, workplace and personal life?
Yep. So this is actually one of the key ideas that we teach when we're talking about leaders intentionally developing teams, not work groups, not just people working on a project that are not having a shared goal as well as just shared commitment to being on the team, but we're talking about an actual team. So one of the key features of that leaders need to develop is what I call team esteem. Team esteem has 3 components. Think of them as a triangle that you need the 2 bottom components to basically level up to elevate the entire team. The first key component of team esteem is belonging. You have to show as a leader through your words, through your actions, that people absolutely belong and are welcome. The second key factor is that people have to know, again, through your words and your actions, that they have value, that they have worth, that you appreciate what they are bringing to the table, and you believe that it is important, that it is valuable, that it's worthy. And the third piece, which is the most important piece, is that the people on the team all know that they have power.
That's essential. Not just that they have power, but that they are seen as a human being. This goes back to why I started this podcast, which is to bring an emphasis to the human, not just the product, not just the bottom line, not just the sales. Because if your humans in your company, in your organization, feel that they belong, that they are worthy, that they are valued, their productivity will be higher. But to do this, you have to place the emphasis on the human. And this is what I call human centric leadership. That goes back to what is your leadership? Your leadership isn't just time management. Your leadership is who you are as a human and how you meet somebody else as a human, and you help them thrive. You elevate them. And that's what I love about what you are doing with ILABI, because you're elevating people, focusing, yes, on the traditional leadership management skills, but also on the human part of it. And that's where transformation, retention, change, productivity, and revenues go up. Research does back this up. So we're not just speaking fluff. There's an actual science to it, but it's easy to get so caught up with the bottom line that we can at times, and I've done it, we all have, forget about the human element. And that is the most critical part about leadership, because I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and it goes a little bit against the grain. Inspiring people is not enough. You will lose talent if they do not have a sense of value and belonging.
And power and shared power. Shared power is really important. People don't even realize that just from the energy that they bring as they walk into the door, that impacts the rest of the team. So I'm going to do a little bit of acting right now, but I'm sure everybody can relate to this. So sometimes you're walking in the door like this. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, my coffee isn't hitting yet. These same people are here. So what does that do? That just deflates the room, right?
And it's very low energy. You feel the negativity.
Right. But if you hit the room like this, good morning. I'm really genuinely glad to see y'all.
And it has to be genuine.
It has to be genuine. It can't be faked or forced. You have to be excited to see your coworkers. You have to be proud of the work that you collectively are doing, not just you in isolation in a box. You collectively are doing, and you have to understand that you're going to do greater things that impact more people when you have an entire team involved. You do not do as much work as quickly, as innovatively, unless you have a team. So I'm very adamant. Absolutely, you got to be energized. You can't be sitting there like, I just don't want to be here. If you don't want to be there, then it is time to figure out what's your next move.
And I will say, so we're in July of 2023, when this specific episode is being recorded. The most recent Gallup poll, I believe, says that about % of people are looking for alternative employment. And that is because of this disengagement, because there isn't a sense of belonging and value and worth
and power. Power. You cannot forget power, because if people don't feel that they have the ability to impact their job, impact others' lives, a voice, then they oftentimes feel like nothing I do matters. And that goes straight into either being past disengaged,
low morale,
but also there are people that will feed into that negative energy and then start saying everything and looking for everything that's wrong. One of the things that we do as human beings, just from a very, very basic level, like when we're talking about human beings over the ages, we are constantly scanning for threats, and that's just in our nervous system.
That's constantly actually a biological function.
Yes,
a flight or fight biological function. So absolutely, we are scanning, which takes me to the next point, which is having this positive attitude, this energized, authentic attitude does not negate that we all have bad days. We all do. It does not negate that sometimes we have difficult life circumstances. That's normal. We're not saying that that's never going to happen to you. We're not saying you're never going to have a bad day, because that would be inauthentic. It does happen, but we have a choice of how we show up.
Absolutely. And also, if you are constantly looking for the threat, if you are constantly looking for what's wrong, then that's all you're going to see. You literally have to retrain your brain to say, instead of looking for threats, let me look for possibilities. Instead of focusing on the problem, let me focus on solutions. Instead of focusing on everything that is bad and terrible and harmful, not maybe just in my workplace, but in the world around me, then you are going to constantly diminish and shrink. You can only go forward and be authentic and positive and powerful if you look for what's right. If you believe that there is a possibility of things to be different, to be better, to be more fun, to be more engaging. And you have to believe that.
And you know what's interesting, Holly, is that sometimes people will say, well, that works for you, but not for me. People don't believe that it can work for them. And I remember, I want to say about 10 years ago, somebody recommended a book. I believe it's called E equals MC square. And I don't recall the name of the author, but it was this idea that what you focus on is what you create. And this book took you through daily exercises of things that were improbable, but that you needed to look for over a 24-hour period. I did the exercises because I wasn't sure. I needed confirmation. So I remember reading this book, and one of the exercises was to look for purple butterflies. It was a choice between looking for purple butterflies and something else that to me seemed a lot more easier to find. So I said, what are the chances that in the next 24 hours, I will find purple butterflies? So for 24 hours, I was constantly looking. And the 24 hours were coming to a close. And I had seen maybe 2 or 3. I was starting to feel a little deflated, thinking it doesn't work. Then I went to a friend's house. I walked in, and I had been in this house many times. And I noticed for the first time, all of their cushions had purple butterflies.
That is wonderful.
And I started to count them. And I counted about 100 butterflies in their cushions. And that's when I had that physical proof that, yes, what you focus on is what will be your reality. And I found that, yes, what you focus on does happen. And it's not something outside of me that works for some other person with some sort of magical woo skills. No, this works for everybody. It is actually something tangible. And there's also a science to this. What we decide and how we decide to show up in life makes a difference. It's a choice. And yes, we can choose to show up with that authentic smile.
Yes.
Good morning. How are you? And there's days where the energy levels might fluctuate, but we can still choose it and do our best to have our best day, both in and outside of the workplace.
You actually made me think of another book that I love to read called The Happiness Advantage. Basically, what this book explores is positive psychology, because for so many years, the majority of psychology has been focusing on what's wrong again. In his research over the years, he has focused on what's right. So one of my favorite examples that he provides in the book is the concept of the Zorro circle. So a Zorro circle is basically the idea, like if you think about Zorro, who, if you watch the movie or read the book, is a master swordsman, but he didn't start off as a master swordsman. He had to learn. So at the beginning, he was very, very terrible and bad. And so he practiced with another master who taught him while he was in prison. And then once he got out of prison, he basically started taking on bigger and bigger and bigger fights. But he first mastered his circle, small circle, before going out and fighting bigger and bigger wars. The thing is, when you have those small successes, you're energized, you feel really, really good. And then you are willing to take on bigger and bigger and bigger tasks.
This idea of starting with small steps, we can do that in terms of having more positivity. So let's circle back to this whole idea of the sorrow circle. You can start off small by saying, you know what, today I am going to say good morning to everybody.
Yes.
Tomorrow I'm going to say good morning with a smile, and then you can build on it. Basically, what we're talking about here is not just those small practices, but those small practices become a habit.
Yes.
And they make all the difference in the world.
One of the other concepts that I like to teach is that we need to be more intentional about our relationships, especially with those we work with, because you have to care about people past the job if you are going to be a true team, first of all. And then secondly, if people believe that you're not being transactional, that you're not just being nice or friendly or positive to get something out of them, you're doing it because you're also trying to motivate them and care about them. Guess what? They'll be more willing to help you when you need help. So again, it's like one of these win-wins. If you just do the right thing,
and from that authentic place,
from an authentic,
not purely transactional,
people are willing to work with you. And then again, if they cannot work with you at that moment because maybe they're too busy, they're going to do that extra step of saying, hey, I can't do this now, but maybe I can do it a week from now. Does that work? Or I'm going to recommend someone who I know is available right now and can help you. People are willing to help you, but you have to be willing, as I said, first to work on your relationship with them when you don't need anything. And you also have to be humble enough to ask for help when you need help.
Yeah.
Most people are very willing to help.
You know, I remember in my early 20s hearing this beautiful quote saying, the best leaders are the best followers. And what that's saying is that, yes, you can ask for help and sometimes let somebody else take the lead.
Yes.
That's actually something that's very powerful that leaders do, not because they can't do it, but because sometimes it's more appropriate for somebody else to do it. It's a way to empower other people. It's a way for you to also receive the help that you need. It's also a way to help somebody else rise in their own leadership.
Absolutely. People need encouragement. People need mentorship. People need friendship. People need feedback. And the feedback does need to be positive. It's okay that, yes, sometimes you have to criticize, but there is a ratio. And the ratio for people that are on high performing teams, the ratio of compliments to criticism, 7-1. 7 compliments to 1 thing that you have to criticize. For most workplaces, the ratio of compliments to criticism is either 1-1 or 0-1. I realized that a lot of times when, especially when I was in operations in the hospital, and just the way a hospital situation occurs, is that people are always looking for what's wrong. They're looking for what's wrong, not just because of the fact that things can go wrong, but they're looking at what is wrong because of the regulatory environment.
Right.
Hospitals are a place with regard to
clients.
You're not supposed to make mistakes because mistakes can cost people's lives.
Yeah.
So totally get that. But again, instead of always looking for what's wrong, I understand you have to sometimes look for what's right. Just spend an hour a day looking for what's right, or spend a day of your work week looking for what's right. When you start doing that, it's like you said, retraining your focus, developing a new habit. And then all of a sudden, because you're noticing it, Hopefully you will also speak on it, share it with other people, give them compliments. And then what happens? You are reinforcing good behavior.
And in addition to that, I'd like to add that because you are focusing on what is right, it affects how you feel. It affects your own attitude because you're seeing things that are right. Of course, it is very important to give feedback. It's important to address things that are not working well. We're not saying to ignore that. No, you need to give feedback when it is critical and important. But when you are looking for those things that are right, you also feel good because you have physical proof of what is working. And you share that with people. And that further empowers them. And that gives them the impetus to continue to move forward with not just their job and their productivity, but your shared mission and vision. And that's part of creating power workplace environments that people like to go to.
And that is very important.
Yeah.
We spend so many hours at work. Work should be a place where there is joy, where there is pride, where there is purpose and values that are aligned, maybe not with all of your values. I mean, nothing's perfect, but are reasonably aligned with things that are important to you. Because again, if you love what you're doing, you put in that extra time and energy without thought, because again, it's fun. It's joyful. Right. You're getting something out of it. Also, the energy that gives off oftentimes then powerfully affects your coworkers, your customers, your clients, and even your supervisors. Remember that the people that you report to also need encouragement. They also need compliments. It's not just the people that maybe report to you or your peers, but we often forget that. We forget that people need to hear that they're doing a good job, that they are making a difference. It's important to know that.
And to say thank you, It's something basic.
And you literally can't say thank you enough. It's impossible. It's literally impossible to say thank you too much. People really appreciate thank yous. They really appreciate when you see them and you care about them past the work. They really appreciate when you're willing to take the time to notice and to show that you really appreciate the worth, the value that they're bringing to the table. And then what does that create? Belonging. And then what does that create? Power. So that is all those essential things of team esteem. And for those of you who are familiar with these concepts, do understand that team esteem is basically just leveling out self-esteem. So these same things that you have to intentionally create with teams, you also have to feel as an individual to feel good in an environment. You have to have high self-esteem. You have to feel that you belong, that you have worth and value, and that you have power. And those are the things that make you feel good as well. So of course it makes sense that then you spread that further out into the team, because then again, it's a collective team esteem.
Exactly. And I'd like to add to that all organizations are horizontal and vertical. So when you have that upward motion, right, you have people that are below you in terms of their job description, they may report to you, and there's people that are above you that you may report to. And everybody should be valued equally, because without the whole team, the whole organization does not work. Then, right, there's that other lateral shape, which is your team that's maybe part of a division. And that division needs to work with other divisions, it's cross-functional. So this is part of that building out, not just affects your team in terms of its directionality going outward, but also upward. And that's the strength that team esteem builds. It's not just about one particular team, but the entire organization as a whole.
Can I interrupt you really quickly?
Of course.
When you said that, it made me think back to, again, when I worked with the hospitals, and I worked with very baseline operations. So these are what I call the operations that are the things that make a hospital move. It was, for example, housekeeping, it was patient transportation, valet, bus drivers, grounds, etc. Right? So very frontline, basic things. And I remember talking to the housekeeping department. And when I went there, honestly, they were not feeling valued. They were not feeling seen. They were not feeling important. And I remember talking to them in one of our department meetings. And so what we did is we combined all support services. We also brought in people like, from example, from security, from the service center, which are the people that answer the phone calls when you call in. We also brought in maintenance, another kind of usually forgotten group at a hospital, but absolutely essential. If things don't work, nothing works, right? You can't save a life if the equipment doesn't work, or the lights aren't on, or the air conditioning's not on. But anyway, I remember talking specifically to the housekeeping department, and initially their body language was very low. It was very slumped. It was very not proud, not feeling seen, just being invisible, right? And so I remember saying to them, I said, hey guys and ladies, do understand that I am crystal clear that your job is as important as a surgeon.
Yes.
And the reason is this: if the place where the surgeon is doing his or her work isn't clean, perfectly clean. When I say clean, I'm implying sanitized, okay? That there's nothing that can happen. The patient, who could be your family member, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your aunt, your mother, your father, your grandparent, your child, they could die. They could die because one of the biggest killers in hospitals are hospital-acquired infections, because there are other people that are sick. They're like a little tiny splatter of blood or some other bodily fluid, or, like we learned during COVID, just the air that we breathe can infect one person to the other. So I was like, your job is as important as the surgeon. I know you're not paid as much. I know that unfortunately the organization at this time may not realize you're that important, but I want you to know that I see you and I know that you're that important. And that's why we have to do a good job, because we are caring for members of our greater community. That could be our immediate family members and friends. And so I need you to care past the work, so that we are taking care that our patients have a very clean and sanitary place in which to heal. And literally after that, I saw, the shoulders back, the smiles, the elevation, because finally they knew
they mattered.
They mattered. They had value.
Yes.
They had worth. They belonged, and they had power. They had the power, just like a surgeon, to save someone's life. They were part of the care team. And there's so many organizations, and I don't want to just say hospitals, it's every organization, that people don't feel that they are seen, that they have worth or value, that they belong, and that they have power. Everyone has power. Everyone. I don't care what your title is. It doesn't matter what your title is.
Exactly. And in that moment, team and organizational esteem dramatically expanded when they realized, yes, I matter. Everybody matters. Nothing can be accomplished alone. It is a fallacy to think that we can do it alone, or that because we have certain levels of education, we have certain titles, that we are the ones. No, everything is a group effort. There is no me in we. Yes, there are things that we accomplish individually, but we're able to do it because somehow somebody has helped us along the way. And when we remember that, we remember the importance of community. of teams being human centric in our leadership. We're getting close to closing time. So I'd like to ask you two more questions. So we'll start with a really easy one. If people want to know more about you and ILABI, where do they go? How does somebody get in contact with you?
So easiest way, because we are now a society that uses the internet, is via the internet. Just so you know what ILABI stands for, I don't know if I said that before. It's the Intercultural Language and Business Institute. So our website is ilabiglobal.com, which is ILABI GLOBAL. Easiest way to get in contact, not just with me, but with my team. The easiest way to reach out is, again, just reaching out to ilabiglobal.com and then just the contact us tab.
Perfect. Holley, many of our listeners are leaders who are traditionally C-level suite positions, MPP positions, but we also have young rising leaders who are learning to develop their own leadership. Based on your experience, is there any advice that you can give to leaders listening, or just anybody that might be coming to our podcast for the first time and want to know what leadership is about?
Yeah, I'm going to give a couple pieces of advice. There's nothing that's in a particular order, just things that seen over the years that have been impactful. The first recommendation I'm going to give is another book. I know, like, everyone's like, oh, reading. It's an old classic, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
And it's right here in my library.
Yeah. So I definitely highly recommend that book, because human nature has not changed. He wrote this book in the 30s. Everything still applies. And it was done from a concept of continuous learning and practice and trying. So that would be one. Another thing that I would highly recommend, if it's possible, go abroad to some place that you haven't been before, meaning internationally, especially if you're looking at your work career. Find an organization that's in another country and see how they're doing it. I understand that not everybody has the resources to do that, get it. But the reason I'm saying try to go abroad and plan is because I know from all the years that I've taught students abroad that people have the most transformational learning experiences when they have to figure everything out, when things are not comfortable and it's not easy. You learn faster and more efficiently, as well as just that whole thing of gaining that perspective of being able to look at your own thoughts and patterns from afar, like being able to be grateful and understand how privileged you are just because of birthright is an important thing to learn, so that you have more empathy and compassion for other people.
And it also, if I may add, helps you with understanding cultural norms that we discussed earlier, but also how people conduct business in other countries, because we now live in a global environment. So not only do you get to grow personally, expand your own worldview, but so does your leadership. So it's always a best practice to be able to have those relational experiences with people from different cultures, specifically cultures that are not similar to yours. It's always good to be able to just relate and have those connections.
My final piece of advice, it's very simple, but I think, again, it's something that people forget. I don't know why, but they do. Whenever you are trying to learn about something new or you're trying to level up, find the experts. Find the experts in whatever it is that you're trying to learn about. Ask for help and find the experts. There are very few people, no matter how important they are, no matter how busy they are, no matter where they are in an organizational hierarchy, that if someone, again, genuinely comes and says, I've been watching you, I've seen you do X, Y, or Z. I believe that you're an expert in this area. Will you be willing to help me? Will you be willing to give me some advice? Can you, if you're too busy, let me know someone else that I could approach? People are willing to help. And then thereby you also are bringing yourself to their attention, which means that they are probably going to say, hey, this is a potential leader that I should be assisting in their development because they sought me out.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that was one of the most potent pieces of advice that you could give, which reminds me of the first job I had when I graduated from college with my undergraduate degree. I went to an interview with the chairman of several corporations. And I remember he asked me, would you rather work with someone smarter than you, or do you want to be the smartest person? I'm freshly out of college, so I was wondering, why is he asking me this? I'm thinking he's going to ask me what I've learned with my skill set. Again, I was young at the time. And immediately I said to him, someone smarter than me, of course, because I can learn from them. And he said to me, exactly, that's what I do. You see all of my companies, he owns several companies. He said, I always hire a president that's smarter than me, and they make me money. I never forgot that. This person who had basically reached the pinnacle of his quote unquote business success always looked for people who knew more than him. And
can I add one more tag to that?
Yes.
Don't just look for people that are smarter than you. Also look for people that are different from you.
Yes.
Diversity, diversity, diversity.
If I may interject, when you're talking about diversity, you're not just talking about color. You're talking
and
about different.
I'm talking not even just talking about different worldviews. I'm talking different ages. I'm talking different genders. I am talking different gender orientations. I am talk religious backgrounds, worldview backgrounds, everything. The reason you want that diversity of opinion, in addition to people, quote unquote, being smarter than you, being experts in areas that you're not as smart in, is because all of that provides your organization with huge competitive advantages, because people are going to be problem solving differently. And at the end of the day, all businesses want to do a couple things. They want to make money or attract money if they're a nonprofit, right? And they want to innovate. And they really want to be, quote unquote, considered the best, the thing that everybody wants to compete against, the winner, or winners. And so when you attract talent that is very different from you, and you're willing to hire and intentionally seek out talent that is very different from who you are as a person. And that also could be diversity in terms of personality preferences, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Like all of these skill sets you need to attract them, and you want them to be on your team. And then your team looks more appealing to others on the outside. At my age, I'm in the, I'll tell everybody, I'm in the 50 plus club. Okay. Over 50. I get highly concerned when I walk into organizations and I do not see a diversity of people in front of me, again, for ages, for all those things that I just mentioned. I'm not going to go over them again. When you have diverse organizations, they are more attractive to others. Can literally see myself when people that maybe are in my age group are, just other. When I say other, not majority, okay? Those are the kind of organizations I'm like, oh, that could be an organization I really want to work with. Again, you're more excited about them because they reflect not only the community in which they sit, but they reflect the United States as a whole and the world as a whole, the global community. Because guess what? We saw this during COVID. If one part of the world shuts down, we all shut down. Just like the war that's occurring right now between Ukraine and Russia, the things that are happening in that war have impacted the world. There's no one that's not feeling it. It's impacting food supplies. It's impacting oil. It's impacting just international relations. It's impacting families and people and in other countries, because there are people that are fleeing from these war zones. There is so much, again, it goes back to that power, that like kind of that ripple effect. We all affect one another. We all influence one another. I hope, because I'm now past 50, so I'm also thinking about my mortality. I hope that maybe someone will watch this podcast or listen to this podcast and be influenced and inspired, even if I'm gone.
Yes.
And even if you're gone.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that, because one of the reasons I started this podcast is that there's the emphasis on the human centric leadership, but also impact. And when I'm talking about impact, I'm not referring about sales, although sales can be a part of it. I'm referring about how can we create a better world through who we are and how we show up in our authenticity, how we show up in our leadership, and how we show up extends to both the workplace, but also our personal lives. So the whole idea is I want a podcast where we could talk about these things, and with the intention that it rings true for people, but also with the intention that, ooh, if they hadn't thought about it yet, now they are, and planting the seeds. For example, as we were talking about, a more diverse workforce.
Yes.
Building team, right? So my intention and my goal is not just for you to listen to us talk, because, of course we are fabulous, but really for it to touch your heart and also your mind, so that you're thinking, yes, I'm going to really focus more on that human element, on building a sense of belonging, on empowering employees. And you can also take that to your personal life. Empower your family and friends. Make sure that they belong. Perhaps volunteer at a nonprofit organization. The list can go on and on. Thank you, Holley, for joining us today. I'd like to remind you to please subscribe and tell your friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you not only to the audience listening, but thank you, Cindy, for inviting me.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us on PreZence. For more information on how you can create greater levels of impactful presence in your professional and personal life, visit www.cindyurrutia.com and follow me on social media. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Feel free to post a comment and we'll read it on the show.